I'm just going to come out and say it. In this world where Twitter's taken away check marks and deepfakes are getting more prevalent and AI is getting smarter, it's getting tougher and tougher to know who for sure you're talking to online or even who you're listening to. So as you listen to this video as well as anything else that I put out, I just want you to remember one thing, and that is, if you don't like something that I had to say, it wasn't me. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews. We are under 1 week from the NFL draft. So today is my final iteration of a 7-round mock draft for the Green Bay Packers. Next week, Monday and Wednesday, I'll still be putting out episodes, more draft-related things, but I decided this final Friday before the draft would be a good time for the final mock. So without further ado, I'm going to list off all of the picks that I did, and then I'm going to dive into the context as to why I chose that player, what's good about them, what they need to work on, etc., etc. So just calling it off right off the bat, you're going to notice I did make a singular trade in here. I did not, however, include compensation for any potential Aaron Rodgers trade. So just bear that in mind. But here we go. I chose at 15, Myles Murphy. 45, Sam LaPorta. 54, Dawand Jones. 78, Rashee Rice. 116, Moro Ojomo. 149, Israel Abanikanda. 170, Anthony Johnson Jr. 232, Bryce Ford-Wheaton. 235, Sean Clifford. 242, Jake Witt. 256, Jake Moody. And in a lot of ways, I'm just going to give you my overall thoughts right off the bat. That's a Packers draft, right? There were a lot of things that were very, very frustrating going through the draft. It didn't work out exactly as I hoped that it would have. But I entered with a select, collection of needs, keeping in mind both the team this year and the future. I chose players that seemed to fit the Packer thresholds athletically, historically. What do they need to do at the position? Keep in mind, tight end is 3 different positions for the Packers. It's not as simple as just tight end anymore. And so, while this was in some ways underwhelming, I didn't get every guy that I wanted. It was a fairly decent representation of where many of these players may go, and also good representation of the fact that you're going against 31 other GMs and you may not get the guys that you want all the time. So with that being said, I did utilize ESPN's mock draft simulator. I got to be totally honest. This was my first time. I've done a couple just for fun, but this is my first time really doing one on there. It's not great. You could tell it's ESPN's first year doing it. It's compared to the product offered by PFF, or I think it's PFN is the other one. Yeah, it's a baby little one. I really like the data that they offer you at the end. After you make a player selection, it tells you how likely was that player to actually be there across all of their mock drafts. And then how likely was it that the player would have been around the next time you picked. So that's a cool little wrinkle that other simulators don't have. But if you're doing a full 7-round mock, you're going to notice by the time you get to round 6, round 7, they don't even have everybody. There's just some guys that just aren't in the simulator. And not only that, but they kind of start to run out of players at positions. And that's not how it works. So there are more players than what's in the simulator. It's just, it's another worthwhile tool. It's still fun to do for mock drafts, but it doesn't offer you a lot of information as you go. PFFs will give you a full write-up on the player, etc. It's just probably the least fun of all of them for me, but still, it was time to utilize that for a mock draft. So let's dive in exactly. So first of all, I'm just going to call off what the first 14 picks were, and you can see what I was dealing with right off the bat. 1, Bryce Young. 2, C.J. Stroud. 3, Jalen Carter. 4, Will Anderson Jr. 5, Anthony Richardson. Because the Seahawks are taking him. I don't know. 6, Christian Gonzalez. 7, Devin Witherspoon. 8, Tyree Wilson. 9, Joey Porter Jr. 10, Jackson Smith and Jigba. 11, Paris Johnson Jr. 12, Nolan Smith. 13, Broderick Jones. 14, Peter Skoronski. Yeah. In a lot of ways, that's kind of a nightmare scenario if you want the Packers to stick at 15. I mean, look, JSN is already off the board. He's considered pretty widely to be the number one wide receiver. Your top corners that you're probably interested in are all gone, and Gonzalez, Witherspoon, Porter even. Even those who want Green Bay to go with another Georgia Bulldog in round one and choose Nolan Smith, he gone. Or how about one of the top offensive tackles, Paris Johnson Jr., Broderick Jones, Peter Tronci, they're all gone. So really, like, who's left? Well, you got any of the tight ends, Mayer, Kincaid, Washington, even if you want to do what most people could be considered a reach. You know, you got Darnell Wright on the offensive line still available, but frankly, I've kind of been turning off to him a little bit, and it doesn't even have a lot to do with how he was absolutely dogged in Bob McGinn's scouting reports from fellow scouts along the league. If you haven't seen that yet, I would check it out. And I just, honestly, with Wright, I'm more turned off by the fact that he's exclusively a right tackle. And I have a hard time paying $15 for what is probably going to be just a right tackle. Maybe others feel differently. He certainly does. But I don't know. I didn't like it as much for Green Bay. So ultimately, I thought that this was a great chance. Look, a lot of the premium that we would want are gone. So let's kick it back a little bit and get a little something extra. So I orchestrated a trade. And I traded pick 15 to the Los Angeles Chargers for picks 21 and 54. So ultimately sliding 6 spots back, and I netted another second rounder, which in this draft is pretty worthwhile. Now, between picks 15 and 20, what happened was Bijan Robinson, Will Levis, Torrance, Emmanuel Forbes, Lucas Van Ness, and Deonte Banks. So 2 more corners off the board. Lucas Van Ness now gone. So really, what did I do at 15? Again, I could have picked the tight ends. Could have picked right. But at the end of the day, Myles Murphy. Yeah, I think at pick 21, Myles Murphy makes a lot of sense. He's one of the most athletically gifted players in this draft. His pro day really showed that. He's got an overall RAS score of 9.71. He's only 21 years old. All of that fits what Brian Gutekunst looks for. 6'5", 268 pounds is pretty much the ideal size. He sets the edge incredibly well. Very Preston Smith-like. But a few quotes here are probably what he needs to work on most, despite his freakish nature. He's more of a disruption over a finisher. All right, I mean, you could probably attach the same label to Rashawn Gary a lot, too. And then he needs more tools in the toolbox for pass rushing. Yeah. That's like, for a 21-year-old pass rusher extraordinaire, that's a fairly common critique coming out of college. But still, nonetheless, pick 21, Myles Murphy. Zipping ahead to round 2, Packers tight end, I chose Sam LaPorta from the Iowa Hawkeyes. He's a movable tight end. He can play in the true tight end spot. He can play in the slot. And even some scouting reports say that he can just be pushed outside if you really want to. Coming in at 6'3", 244 pounds, he's a little undersized for the tight end position, but not enough to where you're concerned. He posted an overall RAS of 9.02. His real strength in his game is his receiving. He's a very competent receiver, a quality route runner, kind of keeping in the tradition of Iowa tight ends that have included George Kittle, amongst others. I found a really cool stat from Packers Wire that said 71.7% of his receptions were either first downs or touchdowns. This is also a guy who averaged 11.6 yards per catch, and this was on an Iowa team where the offense really struggled this year. It wasn't your typical Iowa offense. It was a very young offensive line, and LaPorta, with at least capable blocking skills, was able to help, but he also got exposed at times because the offensive line left him out to dry. Pair that with some sufficient quarterback play, and he had some relatively, I don't want to say lackluster numbers, but he didn't break out the way that some thought he could. In a typical year that doesn't have Michael Mayer and doesn't have Washington and doesn't have others, you're realistically looking at LaPorta being one of the upper tight ends of the draft and quite possibly a late first-round pick. But because of this year's such an elite class, I'm just fine getting LaPorta at 45. By the way, if you were wondering, well, what about Mayer? What about Washington? They were all gone. In fact, they all went. Kincaid, Washington, and Mayer all went in the first round. Darnell Washington even went pick 27, I believe it was off the top of my head, to the Buffalo Bills. Yeah, it's just a little rich for a tight end, folks. So we'll take LaPorta and call it a day. Moving on to the next pick. This would be the pick that I got from Los Angeles Chargers, pick 54. Now, I had two options here. I wanted an offensive tackle. Okay, that was one of the needs that I obviously needed coming into this draft. And there were two guys on the board, one being Dawand Jones, the other one being Cody Mauch. And in a lot of ways, you can't get too much more different types of prospects at tackle. But there's just too much upside with Dawand Jones from OSU. 6'8", 374 pounds, and the man can dunk a basketball. That is so much weight to lift off the ground, and he dunks. He's just a monster of a human. One quote that I got from him that I absolutely loved is, he is a monster in the run game and a mountain in pass pro. He was one of the best pure blockers in the draft. I just think you're getting a guy here who maybe isn't the most perfect Packer pick. He's not the most nimble, but he is strong and he is a bulldozer. And if you want to put him at left or right, he could do both according to most scouting reports, but most prefer him at right. Which, if in the future you want to kick Elton out to left, this is post-Bakhtiari, kick Elton out to left or Zach Tom play left, and then you've got just a massive human over there at right. I mean, it's tough to find a human who's bigger than Caleb Jones, and yet here we may have done it. The only real knocks in his game happen to be his overall foot speed. It's impressive for his size, but he can occasionally get tripped up. But then also, too, while he just bullies a lot of edge rushers, and speed guys stand no chance against him because he's so just encompassing in size, bull rushers don't stand much of a chance of him because he's so much stronger than everyone. But he can occasionally get out-leveraged. Sometimes because he's so big, they can push up and really kind of get under his pads, and then he's backpedaling. That's the big knock on his game. And if that's it, that's okay. Especially considering that this year is probably a redshirt year for any tackle that they bring in. Moving on to the third round, pick 78, hopefully to break the third round curse of the Green Bay Packers, would be wide receiver from SMU, Rashee Rice, coming in at 6'1", 204 pounds, a RAS score above what they need as well. For some reason, that's not my notes. Let me just double check right here. I didn't write that down. I'm an idiot. So Rashee Rice, I know his RAS score was above 9. He was one of only a couple receivers in the draft that actually was over 6 feet, over 200 pounds, and a RAS score over 9. 3 pretty strong thresholds there for the Packers. There are a bunch of guys who fit the bill here. I mean, there's a lot of wide receivers who meet 2 of those, but then have an athletic trait fall off. Or so. Rashee Rice meets every single threshold that the Green Bay Packers are looking for. He grew in production every year in college, even coming off this year where he posted 1,344 yards, 10 touchdowns, along with 96 catches. That's one heck of a closer to your collegiate career. He has experience inside and out for SMU, and he posted all of those stats while being like the feature for SMU's offense. Everyone knew he was getting the ball, and it just didn't matter. Not only that, he's got a 4.51 40, and realistically, per a lot of scouting reports, he plays quicker than that 40 even came in at. But the thing that really kind of locks him into Green Bay, 74.9 PFF run blocking grade. He's not afraid to get in there and mix it up and utilize his size. And he's a quality run blocker, something his coaches at SMU actually talked quite a bit about. That's a Packer. Moving on to the fourth round pick, 116, Moro Ojomo, defensive line from Texas. The man is a senior and still only 21 years old. He's 6'3", 293 pounds. He posted a RAS score of 9.1. Now, what does he need? He needs more tools in the pass rush toolbox. And that's probably why he's not going to go much higher in the draft than a third or fourth round pick. But in terms of grades, he's one of the best pure, just like productive players in college this year. 84.1 pass rush grade, 91.4 run defense grade. He certainly is a stronger run defense expert as opposed to pass rush, but he has the upside and the athletic traits to potentially become a competent pass rusher. At 293 pounds, he's probably not playing nose tackle for you. He's playing more of the 3-4 end type spots. More of a Jaron Reed type that we saw last year for Green Bay. But look, they need bodies on the defensive line. Just no doubt about it. They need bodies, big and small. They need all types of defensive linemen, considering all they have is TJ Slayton, Devontae Wyatt, and Kenny Clark. And Moro Ojomo would be a very welcome addition to that, especially given his run-stopping prowess. Moving on, pick 149, and this one I had to give some real contemplation. And I do think the Packers may choose running back a little bit earlier than a lot of people think, but I went with Israel Abanikanda, running back from Pitt. A 9.61 RAS score. The man is one of the youngest people in the draft. He is only 20 years old. Per scouting reports, he's a home run waiting to happen. A one-cut running back with ridiculous burst. This year, he ran the ball 239 times for 1,413 yards and 20 touchdowns. Where does he need to improve? He's just not all that strong up the middle. His receiving, he can drop the ball. He's got some concentration drops on his record for sure. And then pass pro. Pass pro would be his big deficiency at this time. He's just straight up not good at it yet. But neither was Aaron Jones coming out when he was a 5th-round pick for the Green Bay Packers. And the Packers may need some replacement running backs coming up soon, considering that as much as we all may want it, we do have to acknowledge that Aaron Jones' cap number is getting worse and worse for the Packers, and A.J. Dillon is entering the last year of his contract. Packers may need the future at running back, and if you can give this guy a first year to be that third running back like Dillon was supposed to be before COVID knocked him out for a lot of the year, and let him learn and let him really adapt to pass pro, a home run waiting to happen with his size, because he's not some tiny little guy who's getting this. He's got very competent running back size. He can learn pass pro. So if the Packers were to invest in him, I mean, look, I saw one draftnik say that he believes that Abanikanda is going to come in as a rookie and be one of the best and purest rookie running backs from this year. Take that in the 5th round and prosper. So moving on now from pick 149, we're going to pick 170. That would be Anthony Johnson Jr., the safety from Iowa State. If you've seen my other mocks or my other profiles or my Quiet Candidates video, you know I love Anthony Johnson Jr. The man has academic awards. The man even has like community service nominations. He used to play corner, and then he was asked for his last year in college to switch to safety because they just needed him to. And he did. And then they were one of the best defenses in the country. He's rangy. He posted an 8.13 RAS. I mean, he meets the Packers' thresholds. Are there safeties earlier in this draft that the Packers may go for? Sidney Brown, Jair Brown, J.L. Skinner. Yes, I felt as though a lot of them in this mock went earlier than I would take them. So Anthony Johnson Jr., this late in the draft of late 5th, that's a steal in my opinion. I would go with either him or Jason Taylor II, but Anthony Johnson Jr., I believe, is probably a little bit more polished. So he's going to come in and he's going to compete right away at a number of the different roles that you have for your safeties. Moving on to the 7th round. Hey, the 7th round, you're filling in gaps and you're just throwing darts. These are lottery tickets. And there is not a player in this draft more so that is a lottery ticket than Bryce Ford-Wheaton. You know that this is another one of my draft crushes, and it's not just because of his combine. 6'3", 221 pounds, 9.97 RAS, one of the highest ever. He ran a 4.38 40, but the big knock on him is that he doesn't play like a guy who ran a 4.38 40. His route tree is limited, but he's willing to do all the dirty work. His blocking is quality and, frankly, an underrated aspect of his game. He's not just a speed guy. Obviously, he doesn't play like his 4.38 speed. But he plays like a big body receiver. But he has it. He obviously has the speed. I just think if you can unlock the athletic traits there, he doesn't play up to them now. But if he does, congratulations, you have a bona fide X-receiver coming from the 7th round. If he can't, all right, you spent it on a dude who you're going to put his athletic traits as special teams for a little bit. Or he doesn't make the roster as a 7th round pick. Either way, this is what the 7th round is for. Throw your darts, get your lottery tickets. Bryce Ford-Wheaton, number 1 on my list. Pick 235, Sean Clifford. Quarterback from Penn State University, was the Rose Bowl MVP this year. Holds passing records for yards and touchdowns from Penn State. He did a visit with the Packers. He had a RAS of 9.04. This is a guy that the Packers at least seems kind of sort of somewhat interested. And in the late 7th, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. The Packers need bodies at quarterback. They obviously have some kind of connection with Clifford. I know Wisconsin fans, as soon as it would announce that Clifford was coming in for a visit, I saw a lot of Badger fans online lose their minds. They do not like this individual. But, if the Packers see something, it's a 7th-round quarterback. You go with it. Pick 242, I opted for Jake Witt, one of the more fascinating stories of the entire draft. I wanted another offensive lineman because they always pick day 3 offensive linemen, and he is a fascinating story. He started out his collegiate career at tight end, but then they had a whole lot of injuries up there at Northern Michigan, I believe is where he went to school. And so they asked him, hey, come play tackle instead. So he added 40 pounds of muscle and started playing tackle. And he blossomed. He found his spot. He went from little used tight end to now probably going to be a draft pick in some way, shape, or form. And going out and blossomed as a tackle. He's only played 13 games at tackle in his collegiate career, so there's not exactly a lot to go off of here. But the thing is, not necessarily in terms of play style, not necessarily in terms of size. He reminds me a lot of Yash. A guy who hasn't been playing football for super long, you don't have a ton to go off of, but has all of the athletic tools, is willing to do the work, did get well coached. You could do a lot worse if you're looking at a lottery ticket for your offensive line. So, Jake Witt. And then pick 256, the final pick for the Packers. Hey, they need a kicker. Jake Moody is one of the top collegiate kickers this year. If you're not going to go sign an NFL free agent, if you're not going to bring back Mason Crosby because he costs too much, go at least spend your last pick on one of the best collegiate kickers there is this year. Normally I wouldn't advocate for it, but hey, you have a hole. If you're not going to pay Mason, fill the hole with somebody. Might as well make him one of the good ones available. So there you have it. Again, an overall rundown of the entire draft. Pick 21, Myles Murphy. Pick 45, Sam LaPorta. 54, Dawand Jones. 78, Rashee Rice. 116, Moro Ojomo. 149, Abanikanda. 170, Anthony Johnson Jr. 232, Bryce Ford-Wheaton. 235, Sean Clifford. 242, Jake Witt. 256, Jake Moody. Was it a perfect draft? No. Do I believe it to be a realistic one? Yeah, probably. I'm not going to leave this draft. If this is what really happens, I'm not going to leave it positively elated. But hey, they plugged almost every single need in some way, shape, or form through this draft. And it's got a world of athletic upside. You could do worse. I hope you have a wonderful pre-draft weekend. I will be back on Monday and Wednesday of next week. And then I'm still sorting out what exactly I'm going to do for the draft. You can bank on there will be a lot of things put out for me. I just don't know completely in what form yet. If it's going to be individual videos, I've considered going live even. So just bear that in mind if you'd like to spend a little bit of time with me during the NFL draft, the wonderful weekend that is. So hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with Lombardi Time Brews. And as always, go Pack Go.